All right, welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. Today we are diving into, well, a very interesting situation, to say the least.
Definitely interesting and timely.
Yeah, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, has issued these arrest warrants for, well, get this, for the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, AND, his former defense minister.
Yoav Gallant.
Yoav Gallant, that's right. Alleged war crimes, crimes against humanity.
All centered around the situation in Gaza.
Exactly. And we've got a stack of articles here. I mean, from, all over the place. We're talking Le Monde,
Le Figaro, France 24.
The Guardian, of course, The Times of Israel, even Middle East Eye. So, we're getting
A wide range of perspectives.
a wide range of perspectives on this. So no spin here, just the facts, folks. We lay it out. You decide what you make of this whole thing. So where do we even begin with this?
Well, I mean, these warrants, I have to say, they have the potential to really shake up international relations as we know them.
Right.
This isn't a small thing.
No kidding. So, okay, the ICC's reasoning, right? It seems pretty straightforward at first glance, at least to me. Alleged war crimes in Gaza. Okay, equals warrants. Makes sense, right?
Seems logical.
But then France comes in and throws a wrench in the whole system, right? They're claiming Netanyahu has immunity because, get this, because Israel isn't even an ICC member.
Which is interesting because they just backed the warrant for Putin.
Exactly. Russia's not a member either, are they? So what gives?
Right. I mean, that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating and so potentially explosive, really. Because it really all boils down to, like, two articles in this massive document called the Rome Statute, which basically created the ICC in the first place. Articles 27 and 98, to be specific. And basically, these lay out the rules about how the court handles these immunity claims. And believe me, they've dealt with this before.
Oh, I bet. I mean, we're talking big names here, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
Guys like Putin, Omar al-Bashir, they all tried to use the same defense, saying they were immune from prosecution.
So there's precedent for this then?
Tons. The ICC has consistently ruled that, in their view, the Rome Statute is all about holding individuals accountable, especially for these really serious international crimes. And they've been very clear that in their eyes, your title, whatever fancy title you have, king, president, prime minister, it doesn't shield you from this court.
Interesting. So what's France's argument then?
Well, they're arguing what's called personal immunity, which basically means that heads of state, leaders, can't be touched by any court while they're still in office.
So it's a direct contradiction to what the ICC is saying.
Absolutely. It flies right in the face of the ICC's stance that they can prosecute sitting leaders.
Oh.
And here's another layer to all this. The ICC doesn't even have its own police force.
Wait, really?
Nope, they rely entirely on member states to actually make the arrests.
Hold on, so you're saying this whole thing hinges on whether other countries actually cooperate with the ICC?
Exactly. The court can make rulings all day long. But if powerful countries like France decide they're just going to pick and choose which ones they'll enforce, well, it throws the whole system into question, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a pretty big loophole.
It is. It's like suddenly international law becomes more like a suggestion box than an actual set of rules everyone have to follow.
Wow. Okay, so I'm starting to see how this case, I mean, it could have consequences way beyond just Netanyahu himself, right? I mean, this is like a stress test for the whole concept of international justice.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting when you see how other countries are reacting, like the UK, for example.
How so?
Well, one of the articles we have here quotes the UK Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, saying that he would be obligated to refer Netanyahu to their own courts if he even set foot in Britain. That's a pretty strong statement compared to France, just saying, immunity, you're good.
Yeah, huge difference.
Right, so it's almost like everyone's watching France now, waiting to see what happens. Like, okay, what if you just ignore the ICC? Do you actually get away with it?
It's a big gamble. So what do you think, what's behind France's decision here? I mean, they have to know this is going to ruffle some feathers.
Well, some of our sources have some interesting theories on that. A lot of experts are pointing to France's relationship with Israel, especially when it comes to trade and regional security.
So basically, ignoring the ICC might be their way of, maintaining those ties, keeping Israel happy.
Possibly. But at what cost, right? I mean, there's the risk of alienating other allies and, undermining the ICC's authority. It's a risky move.
No doubt. But international relations, it's rarely about clear-cut choices, is it?
You got that right. There are always competing interests, hidden agendas, It's never simple.
All right, so we've got the ICC trying to uphold international law, France potentially prioritizing its own interests, and then there's Israel itself. They're not exactly staying quiet through all of this, are they?
Definitely not. One of the articles we have here mentions that Israel is already preparing to appeal the warrants, and of course they've been very vocal in their criticism of the ICC, even accusing it of anti-Semitism.
Which, I mean, it's interesting because back in 2021, they also very strongly opposed the ICC's decision to open an investigation into the 2014 Gaza war.
Right, there's definitely a pattern there. Israel, along with the U.S., has consistently rejected the ICC's jurisdiction.
Yeah, but this time feels different, you know. I mean, with Netanyahu personally named in a warrant, the stakes are much higher.
Oh, absolutely. This is a major escalation. And, we haven't even talked about the other arrest warrant, the one for Mohammed Day.
Oh, right. Hold that thought. That's a whole other layer to this onion that we need to peel back. I think we need a quick breather, and then we can come back to this Deif situation fresh. But folks, don't go anywhere. This deep dive is only getting started. All right, so we're back and ready to jump into this whole Mohammed Deif situation. Remind me again who this guy is and why the ICC is after him.
All right, so Deif is, well, he's the head of Hamas's military wing, their top commander, essentially.
Oh, okay.
And the ICC issued a warrant for him alongside Netanyahu and Gallant, citing those same potential war crimes, crimes against humanity, all that.
But wait, one of the articles mentions something about some debate about whether Deif is even still alive?
Yeah, that's right. Israel has claimed to have, quote unquote, eliminated him multiple times in various operations over the years. But apparently the ICC says they don't have enough evidence to confirm he's actually dead.
So it's like, what's that? Schrodinger's cat. But a military commander this time?
Schrodinger's commander, yeah, something like that.
Which, I mean, it begs the question, how do you even enforce an arrest warrant on someone if you don't even know if they're alive or not?
Exactly. It really highlights the difficulties the ICC faces, getting reliable information in these conflict zones, and then the logistics of it all, trying to arrest someone who might not even exist anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes you wonder, right? Was including Deif in this? Was it maybe a move by the ICC to try and appear impartial? They're addressing actions on both sides of the conflict.
It's possible. We can't know for sure what their internal motivations are, but it definitely adds another layer of complexity to the whole situation.
Okay, so we've got these three warrants, right? Netanyahu, Gallant, and this potentially non-existent Deif. Seems like a pretty strong message, but is anyone even listening?
I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? What is the ICC's role in a conflict as complex and as deeply entrenched as this one, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Some people argue they're overreaching. Others say they're not doing enough. You've got accusations of bias from both sides. And the ICC's stuck trying to navigate this incredibly sensitive, very political minefield.
Yeah, talk about a no-win situation. And honestly, it feels like these warrants, especially the one for Netanyahu, it's like they just poured gasoline on an already raging fire.
I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. Yeah, it's created all this new tension, not just between Israel and Palestine, but between Israel and the whole international community. We're seeing all this pushback already from Israel, accusations of anti-Semitism, a refusal to cooperate, the whole nine yards.
But it's not like this is the first time the ICC has gotten involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Remember that whole investigation they opened back in 2021 into the 2014 Gaza war? That caused a huge uproar, didn't it?
It did. And again, Israel, along with the U.S., completely rejected the ICC's authority.
So it's almost like we're seeing history repeat itself, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, these recent warrants, this feels like a major escalation.
Absolutely. And with that comes even more resistance from Israel and its allies. I mean, that's almost guaranteed.
Which, speaking of allies, how are other countries reacting to all this? I mean, we talked about France going their own way, claiming immunity for Netanyahu. Is anyone else following their lead?
It's a mixed bag, really. The U.S., unsurprisingly, came out strongly in support of Israel, condemning the ICC. But on the other hand, the EU has actually doubled down on its support for the ICC. They're really emphasizing the importance of upholding international law, no matter what.
So it's that, like, the same old global divide, right?
Yeah.
Some with Israel, some with the ICC. What about countries like the UK? I mean, they've been pretty vocal about criticizing Israel's actions in Gaza in the past.
Right. But they've also maintained their support for Israel's, they call, right to defend itself. They're walking a very fine line here, just like a lot of other countries. Like, no one wants to fully alienate either side.
It makes you wonder how this will all play out in the long run, right? Will any of these warrants actually be enforced? I mean, realistically, I can't see Netanyahu or Gallant being, like, dragged off to The Hague anytime soon.
Yeah, probably not. And, as we discussed, his whole situation is just shrouded in uncertainty. But even if they're not, like, immediately enforceable, these warrants still have a lot of weight.
Symbolically, at least, right?
Exactly. It's a big statement, condemnation of Israel's actions. And that could have huge ripple effects down the line.
It's like I don't know, a shot across the bow. A reminder that even those in power might eventually have to answer for their actions.
Precisely. It's a reminder that international justice, even if it's often slow and imperfect, it can still have teeth.
Man, it feels like we're watching, like, a pivotal moment here. This could really reshape how we view justice on a global scale.
I couldn't agree more. And that, folks, is why this whole thing, this set of arrest warrants, it's making headlines around the world. It's not just about Netanyahu or Deif. It's about the idea of international law, whether it can actually hold powerful nations accountable.
Yeah, big questions here. And I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today, the legal stuff, the political motivations, the global repercussions, all of it. But before we wrap up, I think there's one more really crucial question we need to ask. Okay, so we've talked about all the legal arguments and the political maneuvering, and even the possibility that these warrants could be completely ignored. But what does it all mean for the International Criminal Court itself? I mean, if countries can just decide which rulings they want to follow, what's even the point of having this court in the first place?
That's the big question, isn't it? This whole situation really shows how fragile these international institutions can be. I mean, the ICC, it was created to be this, like, symbol of accountability, to hold people accountable, even those powerful people, for their actions. But as we're seeing, it only works if countries actually support it.
Yeah, it's a test almost. Like, if they can't enforce their own decisions in a case as big as this with Netanyahu, will other countries just start ignoring them too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this sets a precedent. And it basically tells everyone that international law is, more like a guideline than an actual rule. And if that's the case, then, well, it really makes you question the future of international justice, doesn't it?
It's a pretty grim thought, but I mean, some people might say that the ICC is going too far in this case. Like, Israel's not even a member. They didn't sign that Rome statute, so why should they have to follow the rules?
Right. That's a very common argument. And it shows the tension that always exists between, national sovereignty and international law. But the ICC's whole point is that there are some crimes, like really terrible crimes, that are so bad, so universally wrong, that they go beyond just one country's laws.
But so things like genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, you're saying those aren't just like offenses against one country, but against humanity as a whole.
Exactly. They're trying to establish a global standard for justice. It doesn't matter where you're from or what your laws are. If you commit these kinds of atrocities, they're saying you'll be held accountable.
It's a powerful idea. But like you said, the challenge is actually enforcing that, especially when you have powerful countries like France and even the U.S. basically undermining the court's authority.
Exactly. It all comes back to that cooperation issue. Right. The ICC can't do anything on its own. It needs countries to work with them. But what happens when those countries have other interests?
It's a tough question, isn't it? It's like this whole case forces us to look at how international justice really works in the real world. And sometimes it comes down to politics and power, not just right and wrong.
And that's, I think, what makes this whole situation so important.
Yeah. So much to think about here. We've gone deep on the legal stuff, the politics, and even, I think, touched on some pretty big philosophical questions about international justice. What stands out to you from all of this?
For me, it's this tension between what the ICC wants to be, this ideal of holding everyone accountable no matter who they are, and then, the messy reality of how power works in the world. It's like those two things are constantly clashing.
It's like a tug of war almost. You've got people who want this global system of justice, and then you've got those who prioritize their own interests above everything else.
And that, my friend, is the question we leave you with today. If powerful countries can just choose to ignore international law whenever it's convenient, then what hope is there for a truly just world? Can the ICC really survive a challenge like this? Or is this the start of its downfall? It's something we all need to consider.
Wow, that's heavy stuff, but it's important stuff. So on that note, folks, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive. I hope it's been, informative, even if it's been a little bit unsettling at times. But the world is a complicated place, and sometimes there are no easy answers. So keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep. That's all from us on The Deep Dive.